and today I'm here with Arthur and Phil, and we're going to talk about some exciting things that have been happening with Michigan basketball the past few weeks in preparation for the season. So the first thing that we're kind of going to discuss is just the shift in dynamic with Howard taking over the reins here and how recruiting has been changing. So I'll let Phil kind of start and talk to us about what he thinks.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's fairly obvious that there's been like a distinct change in the recruiting process since Juwan Howard got here. Like he's really been going after those blue chip 4- and 5-star high school athletes who are at the top of their recruiting class. And I think that's a little bit different from Beeline. I think the Beeline recruiting, as far as like not getting great players and really developing them, is like a little overplayed because he actually was a pretty good recruiter, but he wasn't going after those top guys because he kind of liked to develop players and he didn't want guys that were just going to play for 1 year. So I think we might see like a little bit of a culture change in that the guys might not be around as long, but they might come in more talented and more ready to compete at this level.
How do you think Michigan basketball fans are going to like adapt to that culture shift though? Like, you know, I feel like a lot of the fans, like me especially, like I love watching the players like Mo Wagner come in that first year and just really develop into like an NBA talent, and Xavier Simpson, who we saw come in his freshman year, and now he's quite the leader out on the court and a force to be reckoned with, a defensive force to be reckoned with. Like, how do you think like the fans are going to react to that? I feel like they're excited about these new recruits, but it's really going to change the way that Michigan basketball works.
Yeah, well, I think in the past, you know, these sort of older guys have come in and gone through Beeline's system and come out really great basketball players, and that's helped a lot, particularly in the postseason runs, and having guys who are experienced have helped Michigan win a lot of those sort of big March Madness games that are important to win. So I don't know, it'll be interesting to see what Howard does with these younger guys, and if he's able to get them ready quicker than Beeline did. The other thing is that Howard comes from an NBA background, and he has a lot more NBA experience than Beeline did. So I think he'll you know, maybe be able to give them some more valuable insights into developing their skill set into sort of the NBA skill set more so than Beeline would have.
Right. Yeah. I think another thing too is like when you recruit really well, like Duke and North Carolina do, the strength of your program is not as much in like the pride you have in like the individual players, but more grounded in like the success that each player or each team has like over time. And so it's just going to be a transition phase, I think, but this Michigan fans are still going to be proud of like the team's success, and like we're still going to have a good fan base, and Juwan Howard has clearly already like cemented himself as like a good coach, and he's capable of developing those relationships with the fans too.
Yeah, and speaking of some of those blue blood teams, the AP preseason top 25 poll came out this week, and we saw some of the teams that we always see, like the Dukes, Kentucky, Kansas. We saw Michigan State taking the #1 spot for the first time preseason in program history. So what do we think about that?
Well, it's certainly apparent that they have a better team on paper than we do, just based on last year's performances. But I think it's actually kind of nice for Michigan to be the underdog coming into the year, just to kind of set those expectations a little lower and have kind of like a goal to work for to be competitive with them and maybe win 1 or 2 games against State this year.
Yeah, and you look, Ohio State too is highly ranked in the AP poll, so it's going to be difficult for Michigan with sort of those two of their biggest rivals, projected higher than they are. But again, we come into this season with sort of a lot less expectations, and nobody really knows what this team is going to look like right now, and I think that could play out to Michigan's advantage sort of in the season.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the interesting part too about this poll coming out is that Michigan State got all but 2 of the votes for the #1 spot, and like you said, they've got a strong roster. They're certainly looking like on paper maybe like the better team, like the best team in the Big Ten, but it's kind of a shocking voting.
Decision,
I feel like, especially like Kentucky came in at second with 0 #1 votes.
Right,
so.
That's insane. They're definitely not gonna have a hard time finding that chip on their shoulder mentality this year.
All right, and so the last thing that we're going to kind of talk about is the injuries that have been plaguing the team already preseason. We just heard about Franz Wagner is going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, I think, and Brandon Johns is out in a walking boot right now. So we're losing some of the pieces that we thought might be integral to that starting lineup come next week for the exhibition game.
Yeah, and this is really disappointing too, especially because we heard so many good things about Franz, especially coming into this season, and we were all sort of really looking forward to seeing what he's going to bring, and so now that that debut will be a little delayed. But I think that there's some guys. I think they're going to have to go to a smaller lineup. And probably Nunez will fit into that 3 with Simpson and Brooks in the backcourt, and then Livers at the 4. So it's going to be, but there's good shooting all around, and so it'll be an interesting lineup. A sort of a more modern type lineup. Teskey can shoot. All those guys, I think, are capable shooters and playmakers. So there's still a lot of versatility on that team, and I think they'll, start meshing well.
And given that like Juwan Howard has never been a head coach, it's hard to say like what his offensive style is even going to be. So like, that lineup lends itself well for the shooters, but like he was a big man in the NBA, rebounder, inside scorer. So it may be that, having Franz at the 2 was a better setup for Michigan's offense. And I think now we just don't know. So only time will tell. But I think there are pros and cons to both sides.
I think that smaller lineup that we got to see a little bit last year with Livers at the 4 was really successful for the team. So I'm, for one, like interested to see how we're going to play with this little bit of like injury adversity at the beginning of the year. I think it'll be interesting to get DeJulius and maybe Brooks some minutes that they weren't going to get early on. That I think in the long run will actually be really good for the team.
Absolutely.
So
especially against early on in the year, they start out pretty easily. So get accustomed to the new setup and just be comfortable with the new coaching staff and all that. So it could be worse timing, I suppose.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of the segment today. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to check out our YouTube channel for everything Alley-Oop.